Welcome to Life with Strings Attached. I'm your host, Jamie Gale. In this episode, we're stepping into a space that is, depending on who you ask, either full of possibility or full of uncertainty. My guest today is Sourabh Pateriya, founder and CEO of Soundverse AI, a platform working at the intersection of music, technology, and what it means to create in a world where we have tools that are changing faster than ever before. Sourabh's path flows from engineering to design, from Spotify, where he co-invented Basic Pitch, to working on conversational AI with Samsung's Bixby, and now building a company focused on ethical, artist-first AI music creation. His work sits right at the edge of where creativity and technology meet. But what makes this conversation worth having isn't just the technology, it's the perspective behind it. Before all this, Sourabh was a musician, a guitarist, an electronic music producer, someone who understands what it means to make something from nothing. And now he's asking a much bigger question. What happens when the tools of creation become accessible to everyone? What happens to the role of the skilled artist? This is a conversation about access, about authorship, about ethics, and about whether we're building a future that expands creativity, limits it, or reshapes our current concepts entirely. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Sourabh. I hope that you will too. Sourabh, thank you so much for being on Life with Strings Attached. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Super excited to be part of this.
Yeah. How are things? Are you in Mumbai right now?
So currently I'm in Mumbai. I was spending a lot of time in the US. Just decided to make my way to India to win the Indian market. So yeah, planning to spend some time in Mumbai for now.
Yeah, great. Well, I mean, it's a global business, right? I mean, both of us do work around the world. So, but you get to settle in where, I don't know, culture, food, lifestyle, all that's important to me because we work remotely. And so where's the good food? Where's a beautiful place? And that's where I'm going to do my work.
100%. And personally for me, I think one of the most important part is to save as much time as possible. And I feel somehow I'm able to save a lot of time in Mumbai because of proximity with family and the help which is available over here, which I feel I'm able to put in a very productive way towards the company. So it's a good fit to be here.
Yeah. Great. Good to hear. So you're in a very exciting space. You know, it's well, all right. So for the optimists of the world, you're in a very exciting space. For the pessimists of the world, they're all terrified right now about all of the unknown. But you've been working within what do we say? It's you're a designer, but you're designing in software primarily, right? Your user experience, user interface. Your company Soundverse is a way for people to interact with AI at this point. And so, is there a simple way that you define your body of work for our listeners?
So personally for me, I have been an engineer before I became a designer. So I started my career as an information technology engineer. I worked in the industry as a programmer for some time, eventually got deeper into the design and also got a job at Spotify as a product manager. So I've seen like engineering, design, and product, like things from all the three different lenses. So I think I'm more of a generalist at the moment, if I have to define or put a word to myself. And in the future, in the next 3 to 4 years, I don't know where I will be. So I feel I'm getting into a couple of different roles. Day to day, I find myself doing the marketing job. Sometimes I'm a salesperson. Suddenly I'm resolving customer tickets. And then you have to be expert in communications, like figuring out your press release. So I think it's the world of generalist. And that's where I'm trying to, just try to be good at everything, if not the best at everything. Because I think the future is for the generalist. And I think I'm getting myself ready to be one. When it comes to the body of work, so it's at the intersection of AI and music. So I've personally been a music artist before. I started my career as a metal musician. A lot of people don't know that. I used to play lead guitar for a deathcore band in India, which is a very interesting place to be in because everybody was listening to Bollywood music around me. And
Yep.
I'm from a city where even, if you think about the electronic music, even that was not present at all. People were listening to Bollywood music from 1980s.
Mm-hmm.
So going there and making a statement with deathcore was quite a shift for the city, and I was
Mm-hmm.
able to get a bunch of people working with me and build this band. And eventually, I became an electronic music producer.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel I've done a lot of shift in my career throughout the period of time, going from guitarist to becoming an electronic music producer. And then because I'm so much into technology, I've always tried to converge the technology and music into one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so now with AI and music happening in the world right now, I was able to foresee that in 2022, as soon as I saw the research about text to audio, which was becoming more and more prominent in 2021, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew that I wanted to do something where the creativity and technology is colliding in a very beautiful way, giving birth to an entirely new paradigm altogether. And how I would define my work right now is like I'm just trying to figure out if the creativity wins or the technology wins.
Well, that's how we met, isn't it? We met on a panel discussion in with A3E and the technologies discussion at the NAM show most recently in 2026 NAM show, and it was on those discussions, wasn't it? On sort of where humanity and AI intersect, and more specifically, that panel discussion was supposed to be about the monetary sort of transactions from creation through to monetization,
Right.
and that's a big part of it right now. And of course, since you are a musician and I'm a musician, I'm sure we have lots of friends who are rallying the war cries about how are we going to get paid and justice and ethics and all of these things around it. Um, I am guilty of being a serial entrepreneur, which comes with a incredibly optimistic outlook. I look at it as an increase in my tools and the possibilities. I don't often feel a victim. I feel like, oh, this is a new challenge to overcome, which is exciting and stimulating because I love overcoming challenges. And then it's new opportunity. It's okay.
Right.
So what can we do with this thing? This is an example right now. Here we are. You're in Mumbai. I'm in Canada, close to Ottawa. Let's say we're roughly, I don't know, 8,000 kilometers apart. Speaking in real time.
Probably more.
Yeah, 8 or 10,000 somewhere like this.
Yeah.
Speaking in real time,
Hmm.
recording in high quality with honestly a pretty low budget expense sort of studio setup, presumably on both your side and my side. We have accessible computers with cameras and lighting. What we do today used to take a team of people and a satellite truck outside
Right.
casting, like it was millions of dollars worth of equipment for someone to talk in real time like we're doing right now that you can
Right.
do if you have a reasonable cell phone,
Yeah.
and I think it's really important to keep this in mind when we talk about future possibilities, that when people say, oh, what's going to happen with this and this, do you remember that just your smartphone replaced? I tried to make a list one time. I filled my whiteboard with industries that the iPhone effectively disrupted. And I do say iPhone because it set the standard for the interface.
Right.
Every phone in the world now looks like the first iPhone because it just works, right?
Right.
Um, and so it replaced so many things and made our lives arguably much better. Of course, there's downside. There's downside to every every new innovation.
Right.
So anyways, you said so many things in that first opening statement, which have me sort of going, and I almost wish I could back it up and take it one at a time.
Hmm.
Um, but specifically, you talked about just being a generalist, and I
Yeah.
can certainly be accused of doing the same thing. For instance, why the hell was I invited to being on an AI panel at all? I'm not in artificial intelligence. I'm not even in technologies. My
Right.
primary career is around handmade guitars, which makes me sound like a dinosaur in a conversation with the people who were on those panel discussions, but it is because the subject matter isn't really the most important thing in these discussions.
Right.
It's it's not what we think, it's how we think. And if you know how to think and how to apply the right questions and
Right.
how to dissect a situation and how to interrogate it properly, then the details are almost less important from my perspective anyways. And like you, as an entrepreneur, yes, I'm the founder of our company. You could say the CEO if you would like. It doesn't really matter. But I'm also the guy that sometimes has to build a web page. And I'm also the guy who has to create the images for our promo and negotiate the
Exactly.
contracts and the business models. It's really kind of all of it. And so you seem well suited for it. And you've done some pretty amazing things. You've worked for some remarkable companies. And so sort of I like to do a bit of a dive into the past of our guests that are here. Can you sort of take me from, and you can start as early as you'd like. You can say I was born to these people in this year if you want to go that far back with this family.
Sure.
But just the moments that if we removed those from your life, you feel like, oh, you wouldn't be who you are today, or you
Right.
wouldn't be. And so these are, for instance, I travel all the time, and people ask me, don't you? How can you travel all the time? Don't you miss home? I couldn't do that. Say, well, if you understood that I moved 20 times by the time I was 20, and I've lived in more than 40 different places now, and I'm 49.
Right.
You have to reconcile the fact that I don't really have a sense of home like most people do, and I don't feel disadvantaged by that. But what it leaves me is very free. Someone else
Right.
might call rootless, and that's defined me. So if you remove that from my history, you probably
Yeah.
don't have this Jamie. And so would you mind sort of giving me some background and sort of saying just those moments that you think built to this time?
Absolutely. So I'll take you to a city called Jabalpur, which is
Mhm,
in the middle of India, in a state called
mhm,
Madhya Pradesh. It's a beautiful city with a river called Narmada. And surrounding that river are beautiful marble rocks that I've grown up looking at. There was a beautiful waterfall, almost like the Niagara Falls, but in
mhm,
India. So I used to look at those Hollywood sci-fi movies and see, Niagara Falls and aliens and everything, while the internet was not there back in 1995, 1996. And my exposure to the west of US was primarily through the Hollywood movies.
mhm,
So I used to connect a lot of dots. So I still remember in 1996 or 1997 when I saw the Jurassic Park for the first time in my life. I
mhm,
was blown away by the VFX, and I was blown away how ahead the movie industry was in the US at that point. And as a child, I started imagining what would happen if that industry existed in Jabalpur, in MP. And what if I
mhm,
had the tools to make the same type of movies right there? So it sort of took me in a journey of inquisitiveness, questioning what are those tooling, what does it take to build something like that in a city which is exactly on the opposite side of the globe. And I used to dream of making a dinosaur movie in Jabalpur. Very off topic, very much unrelated to everything that I did, but I'll tell you how things start connecting.
mhm,
So I found the best medium for me to express my creativity was probably drawing because the cameras were not democratized at that point.
mhm, mhm,
So I started drawing like beautiful comic books and I started creating my own stories, imagining that, okay, what if there was a time machine and if there was, a dinosaur and if what would be the story if it was set in India. So I found that probably drawing was the best medium for me to express the dream that I had in my mind. Fast forward, we started getting camera phones. We started getting a lot of equipments which were getting democratized across the world. So I still remember in 2007, I got my hands on guitar for the first time. So I started learning how to play guitar, and expressing my creativity was something which was always in my mind. So I went from visual media to the auditory media, and I started going deeper into music as a whole. Now, why music? So my dad used to listen to a lot of music. Like he used to listen to old Bollywood tracks, and at that point, I think we had started getting some like artists from London and US. They were starting to sell their cassettes back in the days. So
Hmm.
my dad had this beautiful rack of like probably thousands of cassettes, and I used to look at those cassettes in a yeah. So there was I was always looking at the cassettes and the awe, like the graphics, the art of, how they were crafted by the real artists,
Hmm.
and also the physicality of how beautiful those reels were, how they were composed, how they were made. I started recording things in a cassette player, and it
Hmm.
also gave rise to the thinking that how actually the music is made. Like I started wondering about how the creation is done there. Like, so my first project was to simply get a very basic recorder and play music with my hand on a table. And I just
Hmm.
recorded like a lot of such tracks.
Hmm.
And I was like, okay, it was something interesting. And then we formed a very small band in my colony. Like there were like 4 or 5 kids. We used to sing, play whatever, random instruments we could make out of whatever we had, the daily objects.
As a guitar builder and a player, you have a sense for when something's working right. That's why so many of the world's best trust D'Addario. Unmatched tone, perfect intonation, and strings made to the tightest tolerances in the industry. That reputation is no accident. It's the result of 400 years of being obsessed with quality and innovation. D'Addario, when you know, you know.
We
Hmm.
started like recording those things and we started writing random lyrics. We used to sing and do something out of it, but it never led to the quality where it would become something. But those were like the moments which were starting to define me. Like I knew that I was on a journey heading somewhere. Um, and it led me to think more about how the music is performed and how the music is recorded. Now, in order to learn how the music is performed, I decided to pick up guitar in 2008.
Hmm.
Started performing on small school gigs. I was invited for a couple of cafes and small bars to just do
Hmm.
some acoustic gigs with a singer friend of mine. So I started getting exposed to like how the audiences react to different sort of tracks, different sort of mood, what
Hmm.
is the right fit for which moment. And at the same time, for recording those tracks, I started going deeper into FL Studio because suddenly we had this computer in 2005. And in computer, you can install each and every software out there in the world.
Hmm. Hmm.
Suddenly, you did not need like the real production studios. Like suddenly everything was becoming a software. And there was this very famous saying back in the days that software will eat the world. And that
Hmm.
was happening. Like I was purely and like very clearly getting affected by that sitting in Jabalpur, which is a very small city. And all of this technology was most likely being made in San Francisco. It's a very distant world out there. A lot of inventions were happening there. And I was
Hmm.
the direct beneficiary of those technologies. So I was on the receiving end and I was feeling very empowered that, wow, like now suddenly there is a DAW called FL Studio where I can very simply do multi track recordings. And it really made me happy looking at that. Wow, it's so simple. Like I used to think that, you have to buy expensive studios. Like one of my idol, Mr. A.R. Rahman, who's a very well-known musician in India.
Hmm.
Once I saw the video of him showing everyone how his studio looks like, and it was like huge and with a lot of
Hmm.
synthesizers and a lot of equipments and a lot of hardware. And I just always thought my mental model was that it takes a lot of money, power, and some sort of music education to start actually becoming a
Hmm.
musician. So
Well, it did at one point. That was a true assumption.
yeah, exactly.
Quickly changing. Yeah.
And on top of that, FL Studio, like very
Hmm.
simple software. I just simply installed it. We had gotten a demo version from a magazine which had started back in early 2000 called Digit Magazine in India. And they always, which each edition, they used to give a CD with
Hmm.
bunch of demo versions of the software. And we started installing all the softwares. And I felt empowered in my life with those things, which also made me realize that the softwares like FL Studio were empowering, but they were still not there. I knew just like when I was in my own journey learning about all of those things, even these softwares were starting to become better over the period of time. And they were
Mhm.
still complex, but they were trying to get somewhere. They were trying to solve the problem of democratization.
Mhm.
Now, as a engineer who was doing engineering design in parallel, I never had enough time to actually pursue music. The second reason was music as a career is also not very common in India. Like
Mhm.
people always thought that design and music is for elites. That was the
Mm.
saying. In India, first you have to become engineer, and then you think about what you have to do next, because that's how you will make money. You have a stable career, and then you can do the hobbies that you want to. So I saw a couple of my friends becoming musicians. They went on to study at Berkeley, and I saw them becoming incredible musicians. But I never had the liberty to go to a music school. So
Mhm.
I tried to find whatever little time to keep my that childhood inquisitiveness alive. So whenever I got time, I would still sit down and draw a couple of paintings. I would still try to record something, learn a bit more about FL Studio here and there. Until in 2016, when I joined Samsung in their moonshot team, I saw that voice interfaces were becoming extremely simple and they were highly accessible in nature. And suddenly everybody was talking to Siri, everybody was talking to Bixby and Google assistants, and you could say that, hey Google, I'm up. And suddenly all the lights were on in your house and the curtains were opening. There was a music player which was playing your favorite playlists. So the automation was already eating the world. And then
Mhm.
you open FL Studio and then you see the complication of, each and everything that, wow, like there are still hundreds and thousands of knobs. So I saw the gap that, there is some gap that the newer technologies are not making their way into the music technology. Maybe they are in different trajectories altogether. And someone needs to think about how they will connect to each other. So I became more of a explorer in 2017, where I started thinking that, hey, the biggest problem for me as a technologist and as a musician was I was moving to different parts of the world. So my work took me to Singapore, South Korea, Bangalore. And while I was moving, I was not able to carry my studio with me. I had a couple of instruments here and there, but
Mhm.
carrying your mixer, your MIDI controllers, your monitor speakers, it's very difficult to carry everywhere. So I knew that just like me, there is a problem of accessibility out there in the world.
Mhm.
FL Studio as a software was the step number one. The second step would be for someone and everyone to be able to carry their studios in their AR glasses, for example. What if I'm able to install a DAW in my smart glass where I'm able to start interacting with all the real instruments with my voice command, with my hands and everything? So I did a prototype of that in 2018. I called it Soundverse AR.
Mhm.
And after using it for a couple of days and couple of times, it was built for Magic Leap and Quest 1 at that point. I realized that the biggest problem is still of the accessibility of that hardware because AR glasses are not that easy, to
Mhm.
be used by everyone and anyone. So even if I've solved the problem of accessibility within that device, the device itself is not accessible. So while it may be futuristic, maybe at some point it would become useful in the future of time. But at that point, it was not a feasible business. It was an innovative product, but it wouldn't lead to the original vision and the mission I had for making the music creation more accessible. And before I knew, I realized that the problem which I felt deeply in my heart is something which I also want to solve for everyone in the world because I did have that empathy for the world because I've seen a lot of hardships in my life growing up. And I just want to ensure that everyone in the world is able to not go through it. Like they shouldn't be going through that. And everyone should have everything. And I'll do everything in my capacity to keep building whatever is needed. I'll be on my exploration journey and I'll try to open it up for everyone.
Hmm.
Fast forward 2020, I joined Spotify in their music creation team. And that was the moment where I actually got to see the music business from the tech strategy business side very up close and helped me learn a lot of things. Like, for example, Spotify became such a big deal in a very crowded market. Like, there is Apples and Amazons and Googles. Everybody tried to build their music app, but Spotify just by being focused, they were able to build something that nobody was able to build. And they're still the biggest streaming app in the world. So
Hmm.
being up close in front of everyone who was doing that every day gave me and built some sort of belief system in me that, when you're focused, when you really want to solve something with your full conviction, when even if people are not believing in you, even when there are 13 reasons for telling why this will not succeed, if
Hmm.
your heart and soul is very clearly convinced that you're going to win, you are still going to make a lot of value and build something truly incredible. And you might actually still win, even when people are putting bet against you. So 2023 is when I went on the journey to build Soundverse, and I'll be happy to go deeper into that maybe in the future, in a couple of moments.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thank you. Thank you for filling in so many of the important parts, because one of the things I really loved about it is that your story starts with beauty. You reference beauty many times. Um, and it's one of the impressions I got about you the first time we met, to which we had very little interaction. We're sitting in chairs with a microphone in our hands. We're not really having our own conversation, right? We're sort of
Right.
adjacent to each other, and we spoke for a few minutes afterwards. But it became clear to me that you were thinking in a much broader sense than many of the people um, that were in the room necessarily. I felt like, well, I'll get into that in a second. Let's stick with beauty for a moment. Because the thing about beauty is it's really hard to define. It's hard to stay conscious of. People lose track of it. It's not a common thing for people to talk about. Not in the not in the sense of which I think you mean beauty. I don't mean beauty products. I don't mean like going to the shopping mall and seeing makeup. And that's not what you're referring to as beauty.
Right.
Um, and tying that all the way through to you realizing that you could help provide access to things which are difficult to access to. I would translate that to make a more beautiful world and a more or beautiful living experience for everyone. Um, it says a lot about you in that moment. And then one of the next things is that you began to understand your world and shape your thoughts with illustration. And this is something that I see often again is um, many people, I shouldn't be surprised anymore, but many interesting people to me have a background with illustration that I find out that was an important part of them growing up and expressing their ideas. Again, in a way where you're forming your ideas, but directly connected to the aesthetic, I think is a very important part of your narrative. And then the music side of things, which also meant that you were comfortable with not being normal, because I don't think playing guitar, first of all, is normal where you're from. And secondly, certainly not playing like metal was not normal where you were from. So you have to be okay with,
Right.
and the lesson that teaches us is that that we're okay with being disagreeable,
Mm.
not obstinate, not a jerk, but you're okay with thinking differently and understanding that other people don't understand the way that you think in that
Right.
moment. And that's okay. And that's a really foundational thing. It's really that sets you up for so many possibilities in the future where you're not concerned about constantly conforming to the world around yourself.
Right.
And that you began to understand with the recording software in the early days that it gave you agency and that you could start to shape your reality. And so, and now here you are. You are shaping our reality, our virtual and augmented reality as well. But you're doing it in a way where we can interact with it. It's not all about fantasy, it's in a useful way. And so I'm really glad to have met you. And and thank you for sharing. And thank you for the work that you're doing to
Thank you
try
so much.
and make a better life for people and make things accessible for them. Because I know exactly what you're saying with the recording studio.
Yeah.
Made my first recordings on a 4-track cassette recorder. And that was very dry because we didn't have a reverb unit or a delay unit, that external sort of hardware that existed. It wasn't built in a computer. So you were
Right.
literally recording magnetic tape at this point in
Exactly.
time with whatever input you had. If you had a microphone, it was probably a really crappy microphone, and that one microphone went in front of anything that you needed to pick up, or you went direct in, which sounded even worse a lot of the times. And so, but it did force a certain amount of creativity. And so I appreciate that as well. And so building all of these things together means that you have a very hands-on approach, with your engineering through to software. And I believe there's a touch of industrial design that you got into as well in your history, um, which is wonderful because the industrial designer learns how to shape, how to think through the process, how to impose limitations that need to be there in your mind to create something that is able to be communicated in a good experience in the end. And I almost wish everybody learned industrial design to a certain amount. I think that that's a much more useful course in high school than what most of us get taught in in high school
I
is
I
industrial
agree.
design thinking.
Yeah, I think design thinking has definitely positively uh, put me in the right direction. It has made me think about that everything has like multiple degrees of looking at things.
Hmm.
Just looking at apple from one specific direction does not reveal what it is like from the behind. You have to see it from 360 degrees for you to know what is the exact reality of that apple. And I think design thinking actually forces you to think it through, see it from 360 degrees and even 720 degrees, if you will. So
Hmm.
yeah, I agree that design thinking did shape me in a very good way.
Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop is your premier fretted instrument custom case maker, and we invite you to create a musical instrument case unlike any other, one that's unique to you. Every Cedar Creek custom case is hand built by highly skilled craftspeople using only select woods, Providence Forge hardware, and premium instrument friendly materials. At Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop, we are dedicated to helping you design the case of your dreams. Find out more at cedarcreekcases.com. Yeah, but you can see that your life provided the opportunities for you to be able to receive the design thinking. Like once you got into the designer section, you understood how to shape images with your hands, how to shape music with your fingers and presumably your voice and your hands. You said you started by drumming on the table, and Indian culture has some really remarkable, complicated rhythms built into your culture.
Right.
Rhythms are much more complicated in India. I love tabla, and I love the Indian rhythms, the remarkable ways and how we see the interaction between India and America, I mean, the American continent, and how it comes together in a musician like Mohini Day,
Yeah.
the bass player.
Yeah.
She's a wicked bass player, but her fluency in Indian rhythms is a huge advantage for her as a musician, and what she brings to playing what is otherwise traditional now American style music is what she's best known for. But the Indian influence is very strong in there for those who know how to see it or hear it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the
Yeah.
amount of percussion instruments, percussive instruments in India are legit thousands. In each and every region, you will find lots of percussive, different types of percussive instruments. Even tabla has multiple variations, dholak has multiple variations, and even South India has probably so many incredible percussive instruments that even I keep discovering new instruments every day. And I feel that, wow, this sounds so good. So yeah,
Yeah.
India, I feel both in terms of the theory, percussive instruments, melodic instruments, I think there's a completely different spectrum and palette of, sonic
Hmm.
things out there, which are very hard to find. And even I get surprised, discovering those things here and there.
Yeah. 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 So, all right, great. So that's the background. Let's bring it up to date now. So,
Yeah.
you have started a company, founder, co-founder, or did you start it by yourself? Or
Yeah.
you have co-founders with you? Okay, so by yourself. All right, so you founded a company called Soundverse, and why don't you? I've researched it. I know something about it, but for our listeners, why don't you tell me what Soundverse is?
So Soundverse is a AI music creation platform, which is built in a way where it's fully ethical in nature. We are
Hmm.
making it artist first. So we are ensuring that the way we are designing the entire interaction of the platform is fully ethical, usable, and we are also making sure that the artists are getting compensated during that process. We are fully conversational in nature, where we do not want to solve the things with the UI much. We have decided not to take the direction of building a studio, but we want to be OpenAI of music creation, where everything will be conversational. And we have built the agents, which is capable of handling more than 50 AI tools in parallel and achieve majority of the actions related to music generation, control generation, and the editing that anyone can imagine. So if you say that, hey, generate a song, it will generate a song, but you can say that, hey, turn the voice from male to female, it will do it. If you say add reverb to the guitar, simply by typing in the conversation, it will do it. So you can do the generation and the editing simply through conversations.
Hmm. Can we do it in voice prompt, or do we have to
So
type it?
So we did introduce something called the voice prompts. In 2024, we experimented with an assistant called SAR. That was
Hmm.
our prototype of testing out what are the limitations of the voice interface. And at some point, we had to take a call between going after the voice modality and the text modality. There were some trade-offs between both. The
Hmm.
text agent as a whole was far more intelligent. So we decided to go deeper with the text agent for now. But eventually, the goal is to make it fully voice first. So we are getting there
Hmm. Hmm.
again.
Yeah. I just imagine driving on long drives. So as part of my work, I curate shows around the world, and we take a collection of guitars on tour every year throughout the US and across Europe. We hit 25 cities over a dozen countries, three continents, often, most years. And so a portion of my CV should say bus driver, because I spend a lot of hours behind the wheel. And as I'm driving across the desert of West Texas, I would love to be able to voice prompt just make up some music for myself, as opposed to just putting on some music. And I shouldn't be typing and driving. So let me know when the voice prompts get in there, and I'll start making tons of tracks while I'm driving down the road.
Yeah, I think we're not too far from there. Honestly, it should be there, almost there.
Yeah, yeah, that's wonderful. And so take me through this for a second. Exactly how much expression do I get? How do I describe things? What sort of adjectives do I have to use? How specific can I be? Can I name genres, styles? Can I name someone? Can I say, now make that in the style of Clive Stubblefield on drums, and put in some Matt Bellamy on guitar
Right.
and stick in a James Jamerson on bass and see what comes out? Can I name people, or am I getting into the challenge of of rights at that point in time?
Yeah. So that's a tricky one. So we do allow for people to refer to genres, moods,
Hmm.
instruments. You can roughly use some sort of adjectives, some sort of use case that you have in your mind, whether it's for podcast, whether it's for advertisement,
Hmm.
whether it's for music production, which will be ultimately a track which will go on Spotify, or you
Hmm.
can use the genre names like house, lo-fi, metal,
Hmm.
rock, electronic, and then you can also combine the genres. Let's say there are so many genres which do not exist. For example,
Hmm.
DNB Bollywood. Like, how would that sound? Like, we don't know. Or maybe EDM with a bit of Indian classical. How would that sound? So there are a lot
Hmm.
of unexplored genres which there is hardly any material out there, but you can actually combine the genres to create completely new genre as well. Then you
Hmm.
can describe the mood, or you can even describe the story that, hey, I need a background track for a sequence where tiger is chasing a deer. Like, can you help me
Hmm.
generate things? So you're not describing the music, but you're describing the scene. So technically, we work in all of those scenarios. You can also be very specific and define the tempo that it should be 127 BPM. You can say that it should be C sharp scale. You can define the like key scale, everything that you would like to.
Hmm.
All of that is supported. Now, when it comes to using the name of the real artists, that's where it gets a bit tricky. We do not allow that. We simply reject the request. We believe that comes under something called the artist likeness. And artist
Mm.
likeness is a huge area that we are trying to solve because technically, if let's say someone wants to make music in the style of A.R. Rahman, let's just say he is a musician in Bollywood, if A.R. Rahman is getting paid for that, why shouldn't we allow that? Should we allow that? Like anyone in the world is able to listen to any music in the world via Spotify right now. So the
Mhm.
consumption has been democratized already by many, many
Mhm.
companies. But can we do something similar for music creation? And the answer is yes. Like, I think there should be possibilities. If we have the consent of A.R. Rahman, if we have the consent of Hans Zimmer, for example, to
Mhm.
build music, create music in his style, and he's getting compensated for that, then there is a business model out there which very little people are thinking about. And that's where we are also double clicking on. And we have decided to go further ahead in that journey, and we have started signing some sort of consent with all of these artists, and we have started
Mhm.
creating their AI models so that you are able to refer to that specific artist, make music in their style, and they get royalty for that specific situation.
All right. So what what do we deal with when we come to the point where that artist has been so prolific that they've become the hero and they are now the defining characteristic? They've become the Einstein of, the Michael Jordan of. They
Yeah.
are like, if I were a music producer and I
Mm.
was talking to someone, I say, I want you to sing a little more staccato. Give me James Brown the shit out of this.
Yeah.
They would get it when I say James Brown the shit out of this, more staccato, right?
Right.
So everything comes on like there's a hard gate on it. James didn't sing up into almost anything. It was
And
very short, very staccato. And I could say short and staccato and get an opera singer. But when I say James Brown this, James is more than a person. He's an icon. And he defines the genre. He defines a style of singing. And this is what happens. And all of us are inspired by people who became the defining character, and they become the hero. And when you're the hero, you have transcended personality. You're not just another person at that point in time. You are, oh, I'm saying this out loud without really thinking it through, but you become sort of public domain at a certain point in time,
right.
whether you want to or not. You just do. Because you're part of the public consciousness. And
Right.
so, why should we not be able to say that?
Hmm. So there are a couple of limitations. Number one, majority of the top artists that we generally listen to are signed by some of the major labels, and they
Hmm.
control the copyright and the style of those artists. So if let's say we are using their name and if we are trying to generate music or the singing in their style, we are getting into a bit of legal zone, which is not as simple as just simply training on their catalog and allowing Soundverse to generate music or the singing in their style. So that's a bit
Hmm.
of a gray area, which is very difficult to solve. And the way to solve that is probably we can divide that into multiple periods of time. So I'm sure there is so much of music which is already in the public consciousness, like you speak about. Like I'm sure when pop became pop, it was also started by a human being, right?
Hmm.
Like before it became a specific genre. Drum and bass was also started most probably by one single human being, and eventually people started liking it so much that people started adopting, and that became a genre in itself,
Hmm.
transcending the identity of the individual who actually gave birth to drum and bass. Same with
Hmm.
reggae, same with rock, metal. I think we can always trace it back to one, amazing artist who imagined it, gave birth to it, made it so big, it became a revolution, it became a movement, and it became a genre where it has transcended beyond the name of that specific person. But we are living in a world where likeness is a real thing. Where taking name of the people can put us in a bit of a tricky and the legal situation. So, for example,
Hmm.
if I say generate music in the style of Skrillex, that's a danger zone. Most likely, Skrillex owns his own likeness. He
Hmm.
wouldn't want us to generate music in the style of Skrillex, as simple as that, because if we are referring to him as a human being, I'm sure he deserves to get some royalty. At the same time, if we are saying that, hey, generate dubstep music, now the dubstep has transcended also beyond Skrillex, because there are so many people who have contributed to the cloud of dubstep, right? Like dubstep has become this huge cloud of like very specific Skrillex kind of music. And then there are a lot of other artists. So if you are generating dubstep, it's not necessarily Skrillex. It could be any kind of dubstep music. Maybe it can have flute. Skrillex does not have flute. Maybe it has certain tempos, certain instrumentation, sound design, arrangement, which is very different from Skrillex. So I think that's how we are differentiating between the genres and the artists at the moment. And we only want to allow our consumers to refer to the artists who are signed with us so that we are avoiding any legal trouble. And we want to
Mhm.
ensure that if we are allowing people to use the name of an artist, they are getting compensated for it.
This space is normally reserved for brands who make stories like this possible, like the Dario and the Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop. If your company belongs in this conversation, let's talk. We partner with brands who value craft, culture, and the quiet power of a well-placed idea. Yeah. I see why, as a business strategy, you probably need to do it because you don't want to get taken out by lawyers.
Yeah.
I think ultimately that's not sustainable, though. I think that ultimately it might be for a period, and that's a transitional period of a business. I don't mean that your business model is not sustainable. I mean the idea that someone should get paid every time we talk about them. Someone should get paid every time we reference this. I think that's a very dark place to go for humanity. I don't
Right.
think that's a good place at all. You quoted me, you said my name.
Mm.
You owe me some money now. I mean, what the
Right.
hell are we going to do? You know, I
Yeah.
say, well, what do you want to do, sir? All the world's a stage. Oh shit! I just had to pay the people who own Shakespeare
Right.
$1. I better just shut the fuck up because I quote people so often in our culture. We're getting into language laws. We're getting into freedom of speech at this point in time. And I think that's a very dark place for us to go because we're going to be so concerned about what we say because someone's going to tax us on it, that we won't be able to communicate the important things. But I think that's the ultimate trajectory of this line of thinking, which is why it has me so concerned. Not you specifically. I get what you're talking about. I just don't think that we can sustain it over a long period of time. It may be a transitional way of thinking, but
Yeah. I fully agree with you. And there are a lot of nuances to this chain of thought, and I'll try to break it down for you further. And I fully agree with you. Like the other example is that if I went to a specific university, I gathered so much of knowledge from there.
mhm,
I studied design at IIT Bombay. Do
mhm,
I owe them royalty for my life? Probably not, right? Like the current model is that I pay the fee, I'm done.
mhm,
And if we draw the parallel there, that once we have licensed the track from a specific artist, should we keep paying them? Do they deserve to, like, probably most likely they deserve to get paid for making such a huge contribution? But where do we draw the line, right? Like, there's
mhm,
a line to be
mhm,
drawn somewhere out there. And then if you look at the royalty model of Spotify, Spotify did not say that, that pay us $1,000 once in your lifetime and then you have access to the entire catalog forever. That's
mhm.
the other extreme. You're constantly paying the royalty depending on the usage. And I think that's where the line is somewhere out there, that we are saying that for the music creation, there are two different use cases. One is the music creation from the text, where let's say we are generating in the style of someone. That's where we want to avoid, let's say, a situation where it's infinite royalty. I think there's a line to be drawn somewhere. But when it comes to AI models of the artist,
Mhm.
we are positioning it more as a fan artist interaction mechanism. It's more of that you have some sort of patron, that a Patreon. That's the name of the
Mhm.
app. Where let's say if you are making the music in the style of your favorite artist, you're
Mhm.
essentially paying them some royalty for them to be able to let you use their identity. I think that's the way of looking at the model that we are going after. The first one is
Yeah.
a bit grim, and we wouldn't want to go too deep into there. And I think the better fit over there is the some sort of licensing fee with a threshold in how much royalty is owed instead of everything to everyone. I think that's where it gets complex.
Yeah, I want to see it a different way, but the way I currently see it, and again, I know you're working within an existing system, within a legal framework. So again, I'm not blaming you in the scenario here, but I think what we're doing is we're setting up a scenario of haves and have-nots, and what we're going to do is we're going to eventually stop saying people's names, which is not to their benefit, because they just want to get paid indefinitely. At one point in time, the royalties stopped after a certain period of time. Like a patent is only payable for, I think, 20 years,
Mhm.
right? For patent law.
Yeah.
And after 20 years, it becomes public domain.
Yeah.
And so within our industry, the Elixir, the W.L. Gore company who makes the Gore-Tex, coated guitar strings with their Gore-Tex, which made guitar strings last a lot longer. They weren't sticky anymore. They were very smooth to play and such. Not everyone likes
Right.
them, but they're played a lot. Uh, and the patent ran out a couple of years ago, and there were other people who had similar types of products, but honestly, they weren't as good. And as
Mhm.
soon as the patent ran out, they were ready. They were ready to do the next part. But
Right.
honestly, the musicians around the world got a better product as a result of it. But then we have companies, and I'm not a legal expert, but from my understanding, we have companies like Disney who say, well, hey, we're a corporation and corporations have the rights of a person, but corporations never die. Corporations, or not never die, but corporations have the potential to never die. They have the potential to live on forever. And so they've taken those rights that we're going to end at 20 years and fought to extend them for, well, as long as they want.
Right.
But at a certain point in time, if we can't build upon those ideas, I mean, we cripple humanity. And now we have, you're not making the world a better place. You're actually taxing people for your contribution, which is different. I don't have a problem with people getting paid for the work they do, of course, but I do
Right.
think that at a certain point in time, like, how long will it take before we just tie up everything? Tie up every name, tie up every genre. It's already a problem. There's one of my colleagues, Rhett Schul, who has a podcast and is a famous YouTuber for guitar. He's made videos saying he can't play guitar in videos anymore because the people
Mhm.
who own the songbooks, if he
Right.
plays a lick, which to him he just played a blues lick for a second, some AI said, "Oh no, that's Albert King, and Albert King belongs to Atlantic, and Atlantic belongs to me," and they shut it down. And the way it currently does is the creator has to fight to prove that it wasn't Albert King, that he just
Right.
played a lick which reminded you of Albert King, but you're one might say your AI bot doesn't know shit about music because that doesn't sound at all like Albert King to to you or
Right.
me who might know who Albert King really sounds like, right?
Right.
And so, but what's happening is, well, the record companies just get to own it, and
Mhm.
most musicians cannot afford to fight it. So I'll use
Right.
another name. Someone like Rick Beato
Mhm.
literally has a legal team which constantly defends his use of music in his videos so that he can
Right.
get out there. But is
Right.
that really the world we want to live in, where average creators,
Mhm.
kids in their bedroom, can't play a lick and release it online because someone says they own that chord progression? That's
Right.
insane. We
Mhm.
cannot go there. And that is currently where we are. It's not going there. We are there. What do you, and I know it's a problem you're probably trying to solve, but what's happening from inside the industry when I make a case like that?
Right. But first of all, I love the perspective that you're bringing to the conversation. The world is already very complicated. The
Hmm.
world, the way it is structured, even before I was born, copyrights and patents were a thing.
Yes.
People and the law decided that intellectual property is a thing. And if we just to play the devil's advocate for some time, let's think about an individual sitting in a specific city and they make a track which becomes highly popular in nature. And
Hmm.
let's say that track had a specific kind of sound design, certain kind of songwriting style, which was very fresh to the world.
Hmm.
Uh, the argument would be, should that person be allowed to make, should that person be allowed to monetize that? And the answer is yes, they should be able to monetize that as much as possible because they actually gave birth to a completely new idea. They actually push the envelope of what is possible in the music creation industry. They probably invented a new genre altogether from scratch. They did something fantastic with the sound design. Should that person be credited for that? The answer is, in my opinion, yeah, that person should be credited at until certain level. That person
Hmm.
should be able to monetize their track until certain level. Because imagine if everyone starts copying that track and they end up making more money than him, then I think that will also be a little bit unfair. Let's say if I'm a small creator, but then a bigger record label decides to just copy the track, change a little bit of lyrics, go out there, put all the money they have in the bank, which they can, and get like 1 billion streams, and this person gets only 10,000 streams. Is that also a fair world? I think the way we define fair world is always relative in nature. I think it's very contextual in nature. It's also very specific to the situation that we are talking about. In this specific situation, I would rather sit with this small creator who gave rise to this new genre instead of the record label that wronged him. But on the other side, I think that's how the record labels have acted like so far. Like they are sitting with a huge pool of money, and their entire business model is intellectual property. They are trying to protect as much catalog as possible, and they have their business model is that like try to protect as much IP as possible and make money off that. And anyone who's trying to wrong the label is when they can sue them and make money off it and ensure that they are able to keep going on and on in the world. Now,
I mean,
is that fair?
that's intent. You used trying to wrong. So let's put a pin in that for a second,
Yeah,
because we're talking about people inadvertently doing things like Rhett Shule playing a lick, which is of a genre that's existed for a long time, and we have to be able to do that as creators.
right.
Intent is very important, right?
100%.
And so I want you to finish your thought, but I don't want to just move past the idea of intent
Yes.
and
No, I
trying to
agree.
harm a record label.
I
Yeah.
think intention is the ultimate thing. Like if the intention, but then also the question is, I often think about how do we measure the intent? How do we know whether that person really legitimately intended to do X or
Hmm.
was that accidental? Um, and and I don't know the answer actually. I think it's just again very contextual thing in nature. I
Hmm.
would want to live in a world which is far more simpler, in my opinion. And I think a lot of people have been talking about abolishing the copyright law, for example. I know there have
Hmm.
been internal chats about in different countries. They are starting to talk about that AI, given that how it's regurgitating so much of content out there in the world,
Hmm.
the copyright landscape will become highly complex in nature.
Hmm.
And it will be difficult to define who owns what because in the future, even AI model can generate new intellectual property. And if you start monetizing and start putting each and every tiny delta of intellectual property of the world in some sort of box, then it's an insane world, in my opinion. I think you will require more power and energy to protect the intellectual property than to move forward. And that is the other side
Exactly.
of the picture. And I think there we are going through a phase where we are let's say AI came in the world when copyright was still a thing. We are
Hmm.
sitting at a delta right now where we are still trying to see AI from the lens of copyright. And I think that will keep going on for the next couple of years until we realize that the systems and the maintenance that is required to run that system is
Hmm.
becoming insane and hard, like extremely expensive to maintain is when the
Hmm.
world will start seeing what is next. Maybe there will be new algorithms. Maybe there will be agents that will just take care of it. There is no human involvement. And
Hmm.
somebody out there will write an extremely amazing algorithm for how that should be handled by an agent so that we humans can be free in nature and we are not caring about it. But at the same time, I think things will remain complex because humans are involved in that system. Like even if AI is building new intellectual property, human has built a lot of intellectual property, and we will keep operating the artificial intelligence in the future to make new music, new visual media, new text. That that it will become like a very difficult world. And maybe 20 years down the line, the humanity will decide that just let's just get rid of everything everyone owns everything because we are anyway headed towards singularity where everything will converge into one. So let's just stop the madness and just make everything into one thing.
I see that as a much more viable future for humanity. You know, the other part of the conversation is constantly about like as if money is the single most important thing in the world. A- And that I'm not okay with. Of course we use money. I use money. I don't do what I do for free. I can't
Right.
get what I get for nothing. Also, I get that. However, I'm concerned about all the conversation around rights because as an entrepreneur, I have to create value and offer it to someone, and they have to say, "Oh yeah, I'd pay that for that." End of story. Whereas what I currently see is I
Mm.
see taxation and gatekeeping.
Mm.
And I'm not okay with that
Yeah.
because what we have is something that has really lost its value. Music has been democratized, the distribution has been democratized. It's the thing we benefit from all the time. And I think that we have to shift from prioritizing money to prioritizing beauty, truth, trying to realize that these tools are capable of providing us freedoms to be able to live a quality of life and be able to interact with each other in a way that wasn't previously possible. And that needs to be the focus, not how many dollars can we scrape out of this new
But
system.
I hear you, but my question to you would be, how do you see artists making money in the world of AI? What does that business model look like in your head? Because I do feel that right now money is important to survive. You still need money to eat, you need money to
Of
live, pay
course.
your rents. And if an AI company out there has already scraped their hard work and
Hmm.
made an AI model out of that, and the core IP is gone forever, where do you see like how would they make money? Like probably they should just go live the way people are going live right now and just forget about, just similar to how artists are hardly making money in the world of streaming. Do you think the same will happen for AI music? Sorry, it's almost like a
Yeah.
reverse interview, but I'm very curious to hear about
Y-
your opinion there.
These are not interviews; they're conversations, and so
Right.
you're right on task. It's okay. So first of all, I think we have to deal with some assumptions here, and that is one that people should be able to make a living playing music. I don't think anybody should be able to make a living doing anything. I think we need to survive. Remember, we were hunter and gatherers at one point in time,
Right.
and then we found communal systems in which we contributed reciprocal value to each other, in which we accumulated better quality lives, better health, longevity, all of these things by creating value to each other. And that's the way it still works today. So when I was in school, I was going to be a musician. I was going to be a rock star. There was no other plan. The plan was I'm definitely going to be a rock star. I am not and never have been a rock star. I did make a living for a while touring and playing as a musician without doing anything else. I've played all around North America and throughout Europe, but at a certain point in time, it wasn't filling my needs or the needs of my family, and I decided to try a different strategy. And I did. And that worked for a while. And then I tried another strategy and I did. And that worked for a while. And, that's what we do going from one job to the next or creating a new career or a new business concept.
Mm.
Even today, I'm still an artist, but I'm an artist who creates opportunities for other artists, for people to think in different ways. I help other people with their businesses. What do I do? So, Thomas Stoll, a Stanford University professor and economist, he's almost 100 years old and he's still writing books.
Mm.
And in a recent interview, maybe a year or so ago, I saw, as happens when you're close to 100 years old, everyone asks you, what's your advice for future generations? And Thomas Sowell said something so short and clear, the interview was a bit silent in the end, waiting for more. He said, acquire skills people will pay you for. And didn't say anything else. It's that simple. We have to
Right.
contribute value if we want value, and money is value. So we want to get paid. You have to do something worth paying for. Now, let me give you what I think is a short history of the last 100 years of how musicians made money in what we're currently trying to gatekeep and tax people for, from my perspective. And I'm very happy to be wrong about this, but I don't think it's ever been about the music. I think 100% we have been venture capitalists capitalizing on technological advances. And so the way our record industry starts is a scientist, Edison or maybe someone else, figures out how to record sound. Like, this is
Alright.
great. Okay, what can we do with it? I want to make these recording machines. Great, so people will buy it. Okay, and they show it to their friends and family and neighbors, and they say, okay, but why do I need to record sound? What am I going to do with that?
Right.
I said, well, you can record the birds. You can record your daddy telling you a story. You can record some music. And we realized, oh, music. People like to listen to music. And then you could have music when the musicians aren't at home. Okay, so they recorded music. This is the way people who invented recorders, who needed to sell record players to people. And we created records. It's called the record industry for a reason. We sold the recordings, not the music. And then from there, we created the next technology. People say, well, I already have a record player. Yes, but this one has better sounding speakers. Listen to the difference. Oh, that does sound better. Okay, I'll give you $100 for that. What do we do then? We said, oh, it now plays out of two speakers, separate sound. Listen to how much clearer it is. Now you can hear the bass and the drums and the vocals all because we panned a little bit to the right, a little bit to the left. It's clearer now.
Right.
Oh, okay. This 33 sounds better than that 78. This 8-track sounds better. It's more convenient. You can play it in your car. You can't drive down the road with the record. It skips. Here's a cassette tape. Here's a CD. Here's an MP3. And all of this was built around them finding reasons that people would buy the technology. All of the record companies were technology companies, every single one of them. If you look back into their history, they made machines that recorded things. The most popular thing they could sell was music. And when we improved it, because a CD did sound better than a record. I know people now are like, oh no, vinyl sounds the best. Listen, man, we could only EQ things and play notes so low because the vinyl literally couldn't be cut any deeper than that. We had to move to digital to get into those lower and high frequencies that we now hear when we experience an amazing sci-fi movie or a symphony orchestra. And so the technology limited and therefore shaped the sound of Motown. Motown is distorted microphones, compressed drums and bass. The bass didn't sound like that in the room. The bass sounds like that in the record. And so the record industry continued to find new ways and new technologies to sell people, which did improve their lives. The problem is we're at the end of that path. The fidelity almost can't be improved anymore at this point in time. It covers all of the human capacity to perceive. People with cochlear implants can hear lower and higher notes than we can hear with our eardrums, but our speakers and our microphones get everything that we can usefully perceive as a human. And there was other money in distribution. So I'm going to talk for another 2 minutes at you, and then I want to hear your response. So
Sure.
Businessman from New York goes to Memphis, hears someone playing guitar and singing in a way he's never heard before, goes, oh my God, that's fantastic. You should record a record. Oh, thanks, mister. I don't have any money to record a record. Says, oh, well, I have some money. Maybe we could record a record together. Gee, mister, that'd be great. So, but if I'm going to do this, I want to be able to sell them. And so would you mind signing that no one else can record your music? We just record it together? And he says, oh, okay, I'll do that. Great. They go into Sun Records. They record the record in Memphis. He takes it to New York. Well, shit, people love this music. He sells a bunch of records. Let's do it again. Where's the money? It's the venture capitalist. And it's the fact that he could package that moment in time, that moment of time on the street corner that said, this is great. They should experience this in New York. And it was the technology that allowed him to do it. And he took the technology, not the musician, not the songs. He took the technology to New York and sold it. So now we don't need you to trap it in a little box and ship it to a record store and then go to a store and flip through it. It all shows up instantly on our phone. And the musician, by the way, doesn't need that recording studio, as we already talked about. They can record the track and put it out there. There's no money in distribution. There's no money in the retail side of it. We can put it out to the world immediately. And there's people who own bridges and own gates saying, hey, you're supposed to go over my fucking bridge and you're supposed to pay me a toll every time you do it. Well, I'm sorry, sir. I don't need your bridge anymore. So we are trying to keep alive a system, and we're trying to tax people for it, people who don't need it. It's like drying up all the water and then selling it to them out of bottles. That's what we're doing with music right now. Convince me otherwise.
Interesting.
As a guitar builder and a player, you have a sense for when something's working right. That's why so many of the world's best trust D'Addario. Unmatched tone, perfect intonation, and strings made to the tightest tolerances in the industry. That reputation is no accident. It's the result of 400 years of being obsessed with quality and innovation. D'Addario, when you know, you know.
Thoughts.
So on the upside, just to be clear,
Yeah.
if you can create a new technology which improves my life and my experience, I will pay you for it. But
Right.
don't try and tax me for what I can already get for less.
So first of all, I agree. I think majority of the innovations and inventions in this world are, first of all, accidental, right? Like they
Mm.
most likely started in some space laboratory, like for a very different purpose
Right.
altogether. And someone started thinking about how to democratize it and take it to the consumer and make some money off that. And that's where even the designers came into picture, right? Like designers, the job, especially for the product designers in the digital industry, their job is to take the technology and make it consumable and productionize for the consumers out there in the world. So they take the technology, package it in a way where it can be sold to millions of people out there. And as the technology improves, technically only the technology which gets sold remains, otherwise it gets killed. For example, aeroplanes were getting better over the period of time. They were getting faster, faster. Concorde came to a picture and it was probably the fastest plane, which does not exist anymore. And it was much better than the commercial airline right now in the world. It came and disappeared purely because of that it was so advanced where it started causing accidents. It started getting into a situation which was not consumer friendly anymore. The cons were starting to overweigh the pros. So even if the technology is improving again and again and again and over the period of time, it does not necessarily mean that it's a better product for the consumer out there in the world. So they were, as we know, like Concorde does not exist right now, and we are back to the airline, which is or the jets, which are flying at much half the speed or probably one third of the speed of what we were seeing Concorde. So technology will keep improving, has improved, and the argument which I'm trying to make is that the better technology does not automatically mean it's a better product. It does not automatically mean that it's something that people will start consuming automatically until it is serving the needs of that specific person. It should be human centered design instead of technology driven design. Technology is almost like the energy and like something that you need in order to keep building amazing products out there. But the only technology which will stick around in the world is which is usable, which is consumable. Otherwise, it will just remain in the lab. I'm sure the Concorde technology still exists, but it's non-usable. It has died eventually, and probably somebody insane will try again. Maybe 5 years down the line, they will try to make faster airline, and they will figure out the limitation. And probably they will realize that the limitation is not about the airline. It was probably the sonic boom, which they cannot control. It's a physics phenomena. It's so high that it just disturbs the entire population wherever those airplanes are flying. So then you need to set up the aeroplanes 200 kilometers far away from the main city. And as soon as you do that, it also suddenly becomes unusable, right? So better technology does not automatically mean better product out there in the world. So uh, technically, Same thing will be applicable in the music and the AI industry. I think everyone is trying to make better models right now. The streaming product, like people started with the iTunes kind of model where people were buying a specific audio file, and
Hmm.
eventually world adopted the streaming model to a point where Apple, a $1 trillion company, tried to push for the iTunes model, but ultimately the consumer behavior was clear that we will be paying specific money and we are fine paying it per month instead of owning a specific asset for a specific price. It was ultimately the consumer behavior which won and which led to the birth of the streaming paradigm altogether. So
Hmm.
I think I feel consumer behavior should be at the core of anything, what the people want, what they want to pay for, and that should be driving where the technology is going instead of the other way around, technology driving the behavior of the consumer. A lot of tech companies do want to try that, and a lot of innovation does come from there, but only thing that sticks around, like there can be edge cases, I'm sure, like we can think about, but only technologies which are out there, which are becoming democratized right now, are the ones which are consumer friendly, consumer ready. Take the augmented reality glasses, like Apple, again, a $1 trillion
Hmm.
company, built uh, Apple Vision, right? And they tried so hard to sell those augmented reality glasses. Amazing piece of technology, probably far more complex than what sort of programming and hardware it took for humanity to go to the moon. It's far more complex than that.
Hmm.
Uh, Amazing piece of tech, but did it succeed in consumers? No, because the pricing was wrong. The product was too bulky. People simply did not accept it, even if the technology was so good. So, and that is going to happen in the AI music as well. Over the period of time, I think as we are progressing into all of these different consumer models, I think what you're talking about is that maybe there is a place where I shouldn't have to pay the specific artist for referring to that artist. Maybe it's almost like a tax for you. And then there is a model where, I'm saying that artists should be compensated whenever they are being referenced in some way or the other. If it's becoming a very expensive and difficult system to handle, maybe eventually there will be agents and the AI assistants that will take care of it. But also, I am not fully in favor of that model as it is. I'm sure there are more nuances to that. There are more nuances to how record labels are handling that specific situation. And probably at the bottom of my heart, I do feel that a lot of innovation in the music industry, again, this could be very big thing to say, but I think a lot of innovation is held back because of those labels out there in the world.
Hmm.
Should they even be deciding where the world is heading for AI music? Just because historically they have made a lot of money in the music industry, does that mean that they should be making the next decade worth of money through the same industry, or should they move to a completely different thing altogether? So I think there are a lot of nuances to those things over there,
Hmm.
around the compensation, and I think it should be handled case by case basis. I would ideally want to have a far more simpler world. The world would have been easier if labels did not exist. But the reality is that they do exist. And they have built an extremely amazing model, and they would try to
Yeah.
keep making money. They are extremely profitable businesses, and they will try to lobby the world in their favor so that they keep making money even in the next set of technological revolution. Uh, or maybe somebody out there will figure out, maybe governments and the law at the same time, and the technology companies coming together and figure out, no, actually there is a much better and simpler way out there for
Yeah.
technology to be democratized.
I don't see a future for the current model of record companies at all. I think that they made money for a good time, and they made a lot of money for a good time, and I'm glad they did. My life was better for it. My life has been defined by the music I listen to, by buying the albums, the cassette tapes, the CDs, all, and still today, I have my daughter and my grandson are here. And one of my favorite moments is my grandson just comes and finds me wherever I am, takes me by the hand, and leads me to the living room and asks me to dance. Put on
Hmm.
the music. He's 2.5 years old. And he
Wow.
just every day wants to dance. And what do? I pull up my phone, I open up Spotify, and I click on the music in that moment, and I turn on a small, like 10 centimeter by 10 centimeter Bose Bluetooth speaker
Hmm.
because it sounds amazing. If you know where to place it in the room, you have to know something about physics and acoustics. Don't put it in the middle of the room, folks. Put it against the wall if you want some bass response,
Yeah.
and we dance. We dance. And I'm glad that we have that. The thing is, that's not the necessary way to do it anymore. And so, you have some industrial design and some design, uh, your designer currently, and we talked a little bit about industrial design, but I think Raymond Loewy put it really clearly when he
Hmm.
said that if you take two products that are equal in function, equal in quality, and equal in price, they'll choose the better looking one. We have to hit that quality, function, and price, and that's what drives people's interest.
Right.
You know, am I competing on quality? Am I competing on function, which an MP3 outperformed a CD because CDs scratched easy. And we all have, accidents happen because we were trying to change the CD, and these things,
Oh
the,
yeah.
the experience is better. Being able to, fewer people are dying on the roads. I'm sure of it because we can say, hey, Siri, play this, through Spotify in our car.
Right.
And we're getting the music. And ultimately, that's what the people want. The people want the experience. My grandson wants to dance. I want to be able to listen to music or podcasts, often podcasts for me, more often than music, to be honest, when I'm driving. And I just think that fighting that is not a good thing. I think you have to find a way to create value. And so we started this by talking about it was a technology, not the music, in my argument that you made money on. And so I know lots of people who make music all the time. Every day they make music. They don't
Right.
expect to get paid for it. Some of them can contribute something that people will pay for because it sounds better than anyone else around them. That was how the DJ sort of happened. The DJ, frankly, did sound better than a lot of the bands on the stage in the clubs. And so now we get that experience and MTV and so on and so forth. And I think that people should be able to make money doing things, but I do not believe that they have the right to make money doing those things. They have to find a way to contribute something of quality, of function at a price that I'm willing to pay. And that's the guiding hand of the marketplace. And when things change, I don't think it's a reasonable tactic to hold them hostage and demand a higher price than what it's really worth at this point in time. And frankly, music is not worth what it once was. It's just
Hmm.
not.
No, I actually agree to one point that just because something existed traditionally, we still need to keep it.
Mhm,
I believe that the world is ever evolving. The job and the roles are evolving. What existed yesterday may not exist tomorrow. The languages that existed 1,000 years ago may not exist 1,000 years later. A lot of piece of technology that came yesterday may not exist tomorrow. Like we are in a shift where things are constantly moving. And
mhm,
I'm a pro believer that technically we should look forward to where we are heading instead of holding on to what we had.
mhm,
Um, and from that sense, I think it does make a lot of sense where we can say that, some of the traditional roles will change even in the music industry, right? Like mixing engineer was such a big role and people made so much of money doing that. Programmer was a
mhm.
role, but now everything is converging into one prompt engineer. Like if you think about that, right? Like those
Yes,
individual
yes.
roles are converging into one. And similarly, I think at some point there will be some disruption in the live industry. Maybe people just put some sort of device on their head and they feel the same emotions that they feel going to a live concert.
Mhm,
So everything is competing with everything, right? Technology is competing with emotions. Emotions are competing with like human nature, and like if the music is competing with hardware, everything is just trying to converge into one uniform reality, and we don't know where the world is headed. So from that sense, I do fairly understand that the form of the music or the musician will change. It will evolve a lot over the next couple of years. We
Mhm.
don't know how and where it looks like. And there are a lot of incredible new opportunities which will come up. Maybe there will be musicians on the moon. Maybe there will be probably musicians who are simply performing with their mind and performing telepathically. The role and the definitions will keep evolving. And I fully feel that's very likely going to happen. But at the
Mhm.
same time, like you said, like people should acquire the skills that they should get paid for. So even musicians and their form and the platform and the tools and the expressiveness and where and how they express it will fundamentally change maybe over the period of time.
Mhm.
And it may so happen that even that role disappears entirely. Who knows? Even I cannot
Yeah.
I do
Oh,
not know.
sure. So let's. All right.
Hmm.
So we've gotten pretty deep, maybe a little dark for some people, and but
Hmm.
I just think that it's not useful to be willfully ignorant on the
Hmm.
reality of where how the model even worked. So I think I made a pretty strong case to show you that the model was never about the music. The model was about selling the technology and the distribution chain, and that's where the money was. It doesn't mean that the music didn't matter. It means that the way we made money on the music was
Hmm.
because it was difficult to access music, and we could package it
Right.
into a piece of technology and share it with the world, and that cost something. And people said, "Yeah, I'll pay $10 for that, or I'll pay
Right.
$20 for that, whatever it is, so I can get access to that." That's where the money was in the system. You know, I've said this before in this podcast, but you talked about recording and seeing, a famous Indian artist, a recording studio in a TV station, and said, "Wow, it takes a lot of money to record. That's incredible," and it did. And famously, you know, Queen in the Bohemian Rhapsody movie sold their fucking van to record one shitty overnight recording slot. One, their van.
Right.
One overnight slot that no one else wanted, when the engineer's jacked up on coffee, probably not doing his best work,
Hmm.
you know, trying to say, because someone was trying to sell 24 hours of time as opposed to 8 hours of time a day in the studio, right?
Right.
But that's the slot they could afford. And why? Because it was less money, because it was less desirable.
Hmm.
Here we are, economics, right? Quality,
Right.
function, price. The
Hmm.
price was lower, so I'll do the overnight one because that's what I have to give you. And how did
Right.
I pay for it? I sold my van to get it. Now, that engineer doesn't exist, that studio doesn't exist, because now you can buy a MacBook Air for $800 and plug into GarageBand, and you're done. You didn't have to sell your car. You got almost everything you need. you and you're recording, and you don't even need that. If you have an interface, there's actually DAWs online now, where you can actually, if you have internet access and you can plug in. So I don't know what a Focusrite is, but maybe $99, you can plug in
Yeah.
directly to a recording studio. That is fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And the potential that happens from that. Now, the same people who are recording through their Focusrite online are saying, "Where's the money?" Well,
Hmm.
listen, you didn't put any money into it. You didn't pay for a studio. You didn't pay for an engineer. You didn't pay for the gear. You pulled all the money out of it so you could save it. Great. But that means there's no money in the business to distribute.
Right. Hmm.
And so we're happy to save it, but we're not happy when we don't get paid for it. It's two sides of the exact same coin.
I hear your point.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah.
the upside, though, I'll end it on a positive side. Is the upside of it is that they can create. Millions of people can create, and that's gotta be better for humanity. And you have created something with Soundverse that I looked at and thought, this is inspiring. Why? Because I'm a creator. And I thought, oh, I can get in here and I can create things at an
Right.
accessible price, in an accessible way, and that many other people can create too. And that's a world I want to live in. So now that we've dealt with where the money came from, and that there's gatekeepers and taxation happening, let's talk about the fact that now we can make music for what used to cost you your van for an attainable amount of money. And let's talk about, what does it take for someone Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop is your premier fretted instrument custom case maker, and we invite you to create a musical instrument case unlike any other, one that's unique to you. Every Cedar Creek custom case is hand-built by highly skilled craftspeople using only select woods, Providence Forge hardware, and premium instrument-friendly materials. At Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop, we are dedicated to helping you design the case of your dreams. Find out more at cedarcreekcases.com. To get into Soundverse and experiment and actually make music, how much effort's involved and how much money's involved for them to do something?
I mean, honestly, it's free at the moment. So if you want to make your first track and try out how the experience works, just sign up.
Mm-hmm.
We are available on web, App Store, Play Store. We are everywhere. And
Mm-hmm.
all it takes is a very creative idea or a thought. You have to put that in a text box, hit create, and you will have a track in front of you. So all the technical abilities which were required before to turn your idea and creative idea into something which is high quality and consumable, all that has disappeared in Soundverse. All you need is an original idea to make it extremely good. Uh, you can do, let's say, lyrics to song generation. If you want to make an end-to-end song in any genre, any mood, anything that you can imagine, you can go actually nuts. I've tried to write prompts, which actually I felt I started going into a lot of directions which does not exist in the world. Like it would have taken me a lot of time and energy and instrumentalist to get that idea, out using the traditional methodologies. But with a prompt,
Mm-hmm.
all you need is a prompt. You just need to be able to type that out, extract from your mind, and click on create, and you will have your track. So as simple as that. Now, once you have a track, what are the things that you can do in Soundverse? You can edit a specific section. You can say that, hey, I don't like this section, make it darker, make it happier, make it sadder, or make it longer. Or
Mm-hmm.
let's say if you do not like a certain lyrics, you can select that section and you can say that, hey, change that lyrics into this new lyrics, which means you can also very easily dub the songs. So let's say
Mm-hmm.
if you had a song in English, and traditionally, it required probably hundreds of musicians to make that into a Hindi version, Spanish version, Portuguese version, Russian version. You can actually
Mm-hmm.
just write a prompt in that language. We can auto translate, and you can generate a new version of that song simply by creating this. You can also pretty easily beatbox any instrument and
Mm-hmm.
and generate to any instrument. Like, for example, I was telling you about the story of mine of in childhood, like how we used to play tables and,
Yeah.
we used to beatbox different instruments.
Mm-hmm.
So technically, people can now play on their table and then they can say, turn that into tabla or
Mm-hmm.
turn that
Mm-hmm.
into 80s guitar, 80s drum. Or I can
Mm-hmm.
sing a sitar melody and say that, turn it into a realistic sitar. So technically, I believe that voice is the best instrument that all of us carry in the world. So we have turned that into, anyone able to play any instrument. You just simply need your voice. You can select the instrument and you can very easily layer on top of the track that was just generated. So it's not
I,
just AI. You also have a lot of creative control on top of that.
I mean, that's how Michael Jackson did it, except he no longer would need Quincy Jones, Eddie Van Halen, and Bernard Purdy, to make the tracks happen. So he did that. He recorded, he would sing every note. He would make the beatbox, he would sing the
Yeah.
bass line, he would sing the melody line, but then he'd have to go to someone to say, can you play this on
Yeah.
the musical instrument? So now Michael could create that in Soundverse.
Right.
And how much more music might have he created?
100%. So we technically have like all the major instruments, all the way
Mm-hmm.
from guitars, like it can be lead guitar, acoustic guitar, piano, drums, um, and even you can change your vocal texture. Like it's easy to train your own AI model of your voice, and you can swap uh, someone else's singing into your voice or your voice into someone else's singing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think initial days, I also used to express the ideas by simply beatboxing, by singing the notes, by humming the melody.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times when I believe the one-click generation has a lot of limitation. It does not allow me to be me. There's a lot of interpretation which the machine does based on the prompt that you do. So
Hmm.
sometimes I do question if that's the right paradigm for how the music should be made in the world of AI. And if that's the right paradigm, I personally believe the right paradigm is where you also have a lot of control on how it should be. You are able to express not just through the prompts, but also through your voice.
Hmm.
Maybe eventually through some sort of conversations, just the way we are having video call right now. I think you should be able
Yeah.
to do a video call with the AI. And that's the modality where I want to take Soundverse towards, where you're simply having a thoughtful two-way conversation with the AI assistant. And AI is simply assisting you in going from your raw idea to all the potential and the possible outcomes as quickly as possible. So you are still achieving
Yeah.
what you want to achieve in a much more faster and accessible way.
So that brings up a really interesting point. So when you can do anything, it's not about what is possible. It's about defining limitations. And I mean, this is design. Design in general is about setting up a set of parameters that define what you're doing, and the result that comes out is the result of those parameters, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so music's the same way. And what's really interesting, all the criticism of shows like American Idol or The Voice or something of the sort is so many people have tried to sing so perfectly that they all sound kind of the same. But actually, we don't remember perfection. We remember imperfection. The reason that the voices that we really remember instantly, if you've grown up within the culture, people know the sound of Ozzy Osbourne, of Louis Armstrong, of Willie Nelson. None of them were perfect singers. It's the weirdness in their voice that we remember. And so you have to be able to create some level of what might be defined as imperfection, or you could say character that'll happen
Okay.
there. And so can we define that within Soundverse? Can we say, sounds a little too perfect. Can you make me slightly out of tune, or a little more gravelly? Can we do it in the Motown style where those two preamps are kind of, they're actually distorting a little bit. A lot of people think that the Motown singers had all this rasp in their voice, and they had some rasp, but a lot of it's just distortion. It's tube distortion because they're peaking
Yeah.
out the microphones and the preamps at the time.
Right.
And then humans mimic that, and we distort our voices, and then we blow out our voice boxes. But anyways, so can we say less perfect? Can we define it? How specific can we get with these prompts?
So there are a lot of ways of looking at it. First of all, I would like to address what you spoke about, that somehow we remember the imperfections, right?
Hmm.
I think given that each and every recording is becoming so perfect in nature, so if you just try to imagine a bell curve, right? Somehow
Hmm.
we, like everyone who's on the extreme sides, is something which is very easy to remember. Like even in the organization, when people are getting rated, somehow
Hmm.
people who are sitting at the most in between, they are rated average, but people who are the your local maxima or on the extreme side of the bell
The
curve
exceptions.
are
Yeah.
getting recognized and getting remembered. Like either you are too bad or you're too good, right?
Hmm.
Everything in between gets forgotten in the world, right? Even
Hmm.
when it comes to the news or anything which is being consumed in the world, everything which is just too close to that bell curve, the central part of the bell curve gets forgotten by human mind so
Hmm.
easily because we are constantly looking for ways to stimulate our mind, right? Like imperfection is just one way of looking at it. Imperfection does stimulate because it does not fit into the normal and it fits into some of the extreme, whether it's too bad of an imperfection. And then I think that has also become a category where there are a lot of meme musicians who are so bad that people like to consume them. And
Hmm.
that's certainly a big category in India. And they know that they are meme musicians. They are like knowingly, consciously bad. And that's how they are carving their niche. Right.
Yeah.
And then there is the extreme good. And they're too perfect. But I think what is happening with AI is everyone will become too perfect
Hmm.
and s- at at that stage, I think imperfection is one way of standing out. The other way of standing out could be you have such creative ideas, where they are still becoming extreme in some way. They are not fitting the normal in any way. So I think extremely unique ideas is where people can stand out, because everybody will become a perfect producer for some
Mm-hmm.
reason.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those
Yep.
things are going to happen. Now, when it comes to the extremely unique ideas, very achievable in Soundverse. It's not going to just generate what exists out there in the world. It's capable of reimagining things that do not exist. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
the AI model is expert in. It's capable of thinking what will a specific instrument sound in a completely different context. Maybe nobody imagined let's say a remote instrument from Mongolia, how that would fit into a DnB track, or Mongolian throat singing going on with a pop track. And I think
Mm-hmm.
those are
Mm-hmm.
the things which uh, AI can still help you with. So you can still create that extremely unique idea that does not exist in the world. When it comes
Mm-hmm.
to the imperfection, I think one way is you can use the text prompt to write the imperfections. You can say that, I just want the scale to be having these notes, and one note can be slightly semitone up and down, and you can define those things. So there are two types of the foundation models. One is one kind of it is called chain of thought model. They are much more specific. You can define define things which are changing over the period of time. You can say that in the second chorus, make violin sound a bit offbeat. Try to add some swing to it, or
Mm-hmm.
make sure that you're just not adding a couple of notations which are on the scale here and there. And then
Mm-hmm.
you can also go very deeper into the layer around the instrumentation. You can say that change the sound design of the instrument from this to this over the period of time. So chain of thought models are far more deeper, more detailed, and like people can define it. We in Soundverse have not made them available yet, but it's under works and something which we will be putting out within a month or so. We are not too far from there. The
Mm-hmm.
sort of
Mm-hmm.
models that we have right now, they you can define some of the imperfections, and it's very much dependent on what type of genre you are trying to generate. Like if you're most likely going to generate EDM track, it's going to sound very polished, very synthetic, very artificial. But if you try to do some imperfections with country tracks or acoustic tracks, or things which are sound more human, reggae, vocal
Mm-hmm.
texture,
Mm-hmm.
you can add those details. And somehow we are noticing that the model is good at mimicking it. So even if you're saying that uh, the age of the singer is, let's say, 45-year-old, and you need some sort of grunge in that voice, and it should have certain texture. You can be very specific in defining those things, and the model still picks it up. Now,
Okay.
the problem with
Mm-hmm.
majority of the AI models instead of what we have built is that it's majorly trained on very high quality tracks. We
Mm-hmm.
have like our AI pipeline automatically rejects the imperfect songs. So we are not
Mm.
necessarily trained on that. And for that reason, it's whether it's the best model for generating imperfection, we don't know. Most likely it will still be closer to perfection than imperfection, because we never designed it for imperfection.
The thing is, who decides what's perfect and imperfect? So I'm thinking, could we, how far back is the data set? Because if we go into music recorded in the 1920s, it's the technology is imperfect, the singing, the tuning is imperfect, but is it included in the data set? So we would say that rock music sort of points back. A lot of people would say points back to Robert Johnson, but we only have, I think, one recording of Robert Johnson in a hotel room on a reel-to-reel recorder, and so. Anyways, it's something worth sort of looking into. But here's what I think I'm going to do. And so once I create a track,
Mm.
can I use it for whatever I want after that?
Not
This space is normally reserved for brands who make stories like this possible, like D'Addario and the Cedar Creek Custom Case Shop. If your company belongs in this conversation, let's talk. We partner with brands who value craft, culture, and the quiet power of a well-placed idea.
really. It depends on the tier that you are on. So each tier of
Mm-hmm.
Soundverse has different license attached to it,
Mm-hmm.
which defines what is the scope of usage, whether you are using it privately for your own, let's say, use case, or
Mm-hmm.
whether you want to add that track in the background of a video.
Mhm.
That's royalty-free usage. People can say that, like I want to distribute it to Spotify, Apple Music, that's distribution license, which is in a very
Mhm.
different tier. Some
Mhm.
people want to take it up a notch and say that, hey, I might use that in a movie, or I want to broadcast that on a radio channel. That's sync. And then some people say that I want to make multiple copies of that track and resell those copies to all the different individuals. So from one track, they are generating more revenue by making multiple copies of it. So that's full ownership license. And in Soundverse, all of these licenses are attached to different deals.
All right. So let's give a real case scenario here.
Hmm.
So we're going to release this episode,
Yeah.
and I want to go into Soundverse, and I want to make the intro song
Mhm.
for your episode
Yeah.
and the outro song, because people have already listened to it at this point in time. Go, oh shit, I wasn't paying attention. But now at the end, they're going to
Yeah.
hear an outro song which was created on Soundverse.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go into Soundverse. I'm going to register. You say it's free for use, but now I want to use it as an intro and outro track on a podcast.
Yeah.
Can I do that? And if so, what do I have to pay to do it?
Yes, you can do it. You can use it with the most basic tier.
Mhm.
It's called creator tier. That will cost you $9.99 a month. And
Mhm.
with that, you can use the tracks on podcast, on YouTube videos. And as long as that specific track is not the final product, which is going to Spotify, I think it's fine to use it anywhere.
Well, it is on Spotify. The
Uh,
podcast's on Spotify and Apple
yeah,
Music and everywhere
but
else, right?
that track is not. It should not be the content in itself. If
Mhm.
that is your final product, is when the distribution license occurs. If it's in addition with the different content,
Yeah.
or if it's a background music thing along with a different
Mhm.
video, then it fits under royalty free in our definitions.
All right. So lots of musicians listen to this podcast.
Mhm.
So let's say I want to create it, and let's say I do want to post it to Spotify because I'm going to make the song is somehow better than I expected it was.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised all of a
Yeah.
sudden people are
Mm.
using my song on TikTok and I'm
Mm.
Gangnam Style. And my life changes.
Yeah.
What does that look like on Soundverse?
So number one, if people are using it on TikTok, it's free to use as part of the royalty free license. They wouldn't have to pay anything extra for that. But
Mm-hmm.
if people, let's say, really like the track and they want to upload it on Spotify, something that we follow is called human accompaniment. We say
Mm-hmm.
our general recommendation is that do not upload the track as it is because it might get flagged by the distribution platforms saying that it's fully AI generated music and they might not allow for that to be uploaded on Spotify and Apple Music. So we recommend that try to add some sort of editing or some sort of your own creativity on top of that track and then export it and distribute it.
But
And
I
then,
created the track. What do you mean? How would it be different if I'm going to go in there and if I'm going to hum
yeah,
some melodies and tell it to make that line a cello, make that line a guitar?
then you're
That's not
good.
enough.
Then you're good. Then you're good. Then you wouldn't have to
I
do
see.
anything. But if it's a text to music track,
Yeah.
that's where we have started noticing that DistroKid, TuneCore, and the other distribution platforms, they outrightly reject it, saying that, hey, we do not allow for text to music tracks. And rightly so, a lot of people have tried to abuse that. Like they have generated millions of text to music tracks and they have put
Just playing the
things,
numbers. They're gambling. They're hoping that one will be a hit.
and
I
a lot of
see.
people are winning it. And I'm
Yeah.
sure you get the news that two tracks have made it to the Billboard Top 100. There was a Billboard Top 2 song actually 2 days ago, made
Mm-hmm.
from a AI music generator. So a lot of people are playing that game, and I'm sure a lot of people are also minting a lot of money. But our general recommendation is not to do that. We say that add your creativity, either start from the humming and generate it, or
Mm-hmm.
if it's a text to music song, add some of your creative flair on top of it and then distribute it. You'll be far more safer and it won't be taken off the platforms and DSPs.
Oh, that opens up a whole other can of worms. But
Yeah.
because I don't. Yeah, I don't think that they should be pulling that stuff. But
Oh, yeah.
they get to choose what they're going to put out there, I guess. So theoretically, they should be able to choose what they have on their platform. I just
Yeah,
don't like the whole kind of prejudice around it. Yeah, I think
agree.
you might remember I said in the podcast, or sorry, in the panel discussion, that identifying AI generated music and human
Yeah,
generated music to me was not so different than race music radio stations that we had in America in the
right.
1950s and 60s. That's like, why? Why can't the people just decide? If they like it enough that it hits the Billboard #2, that means the people wanted it. Why should you tell them they can't have it?
Exactly. No, I agree. I think in an ideal world, both traditional music, which is made through traditional channels, or the AI generated music, should be in the same platform. I think they shouldn't be differentiated in any way. And that's my way of looking at things. However, the distribution platforms are getting used to of this new reality. And they're still divided between what to accept and not to accept because it's also very expensive,
Hmm.
action to store a new audio file in all of their servers, distributed everywhere. There is a human involved. It's not fully automated via AI. So until
Hmm.
things
Hmm.
start getting automated by AI, there is a cost, and they're just trying to keep their costs down right now so that it does not break their model.
That's a great perspective. Thank you for saying that.
Hmm.
It's yeah, and again, as I said, Spotify can choose to do that. And one of my concerns as a content creator is relying too much on any one platform because the platform can at any moment decide they're not sharing what you're doing anymore. You're just not even allowed on there. It's their business. And I don't have a right to be on YouTube. I don't have a right to be on Spotify. I have to make a valuable exchange for them. And they have to make a valuable exchange for me. That's been my
Hmm.
primary argument through this entire conversation is that we
Right.
have to have a reciprocal relationship as opposed to one person demanding an unreasonable amount from the other. And so Sorum, thank you so much for taking the time in your very busy schedule. I really, I really appreciate it and have enjoyed the conversation. It's my tradition here as we wrap up the podcast to throw it back to our guests to say, is there a topic or something that you were hoping that we would talk about that we didn't cover so far?
I think you've touched upon things at a lot of detail. And I really enjoyed the conversation. So I feel it was very 360-degree and I loved it. So
Great.
I don't think you left any major topic. Maybe we could have gone deeper into the if let's say there is a world where artists are getting compensated in the world of AI and music, which we did not double click on, then what does
Hmm.
that world look like? But I think we can do it in a different conversation at some other point.
So there's an article on boutiqueguitarshowcase.com. That's one of my businesses, written by Ulrich Teufel, who's an industrial designer, guitar maker.
Okay.
And it's called The Intentional Guitar. And Uli puts forth an argument in this that I had never really considered before, and that is how the guitar has been shaped through copyright law. The electric guitar, the modern guitar has, whereas things like the violin or the Spanish guitar um, had many, many, many contributors. And those many contributors allowed them to dial in perhaps the ideal shape, the ideal size, the ideal weight, materiality, to really, really hone the violin to being such an incredibly performing instrument that it is today. Then if one creator had owned that shape to the violin and we still had to pay the Stradivari family for that today, there would not be a violin industry. He doesn't make that argument. I'm extrapolating that now. And that because of copyright law and how fiercely it's protected within the guitar industry, it forces diversity. And I love diversity, and that's fantastic. But I'm also a little bit sad that we don't get to dial in collectively and make the perfect violin/guitar. And
Right.
so it is a duality. It's not an easy to solve problem. Um, so as far as getting paid is concerned for long time use and AI training, I think that's something that we definitely could dial into. But if we're being really honest with ourselves, we have to then look at our universities and our education system and how we talk about anything. Because if we can't build upon the ideas that came before us, then we're all cavemen digging up dirt. And because we stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us.
Right.
None of this exists if we can't work upon shared ideas. Nothing that I do is original from me. Nothing that you do is original from you. We are collecting other people's ideas and building them together and making small advancements. May seem big in the time, but it took millions of years to get us here.
Hmm?
And so
Yeah.
it's I don't think we can have an indefinite tax on an idea, although I could agree to a period of time where
Yeah.
someone is paid, certainly during a lifetime. That's okay. But imagine we couldn't say anything that Aristotle said. Imagine we couldn't talk about Bertrand Russell or James Brown or Michael Jackson because we didn't have the $5 in our pocket it took to talk about it in that moment. That would be
Yeah.
an
I
awful
think
world.
that's yeah. So I hear your point, and that's the other extreme example of why it should not happen in the industry. And I think I'll be completely fine if the world is much more simpler and there is no, way for people. There's no need to pay for what you want to talk about, what you want to create. And I think that will be a far simpler world. But at the same time, if there is an artist who is actually saying with their own intention and with their own, rights that, hey,
Hmm.
here is a model, like I want my identity to be monetized and I'm
Hmm.
completely fine with that. And I want you to pay for me because my identity is put out there in the marketplace. And whenever someone is using it, I want to get paid for that, which is
Hmm.
a slightly different world than I think the automatic tax versus
Hmm.
intentional tax, right? If
Yep.
someone
Yep.
is that I want to make it, that's where I think it will make sense. But automatic tax just for closing the expression or the freedom of speech, that's
Hmm.
where I think I will also draw the line. I'll not take it too far. And I believe as a humanity, we need to keep it as open as possible and not really regulate a lot of things. And I know most likely it will not be me who will try to regulate that industry, but it will be a couple of labels who might try to. I want to be on the other side. I want to enable the artists to actually want to monetize their identity in a very
Hmm.
safe and in a safe way to their fans, or like building this beautiful relationship between fans and the artist and allowing people to use the identity, build new music in their style, and even do some sort of collaboration together. And there are a lot of details even there that if someone intentionally is signing up for making their identity public, how would they actually make music in such a world, and how would they make money also in such a world?
Yeah. 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 That's open market. And I completely agree with you. And I think you've created a tool where that is possible. And you're going to get my $10. You're going to get my monthly fee. Now it's up to you to keep it. It's up to you to keep providing me a service while I'll continue to pay you $10 a month. But right
Right.
now I'm willing to sign up and pay for that because I'm stimulated by the possibilities that you're presenting. And I'm expecting to go there and have a great time, and I'm expecting to feel inspired and stimulated, and I'm going to be telling other people about it. Particularly, we didn't even touch on this, but my niece developed brain cancer at 7 years old, and she has been in a wheelchair ever since. But she records albums. She records tracks for her summer camp every year. She's a teenager now. And Stella loves making music, but she can't talk as clearly as you and I can. She still has paralysis. And something like this will allow Stella to make music in a way that she's never made it before. And I think of Dr. Galen Buckwalter, who has the first brain computer interface in the prefrontal cortex. And Galen has been trying to now he's directly wired to make a single neuron sing, and he's done it successfully. But Galen is a quadriplegic, and he sings because he has the use of his voice. But Galen would love to be able to make music and play instruments that he's never been able to play. And Soundverse is a possibility to do that. So I'm going to tell Stella and I'm going to tell Galen about what you have. And you may have just made $30 a month. So, Saurabh, thank you so much for being on Life with Strings Attached. It's been a really stimulating conversation. Thank you for making the world just a little more beautiful. And I really do believe that. And I look forward to our future conversations.
Thank you so much for inviting me. What a pleasure speaking with you, and really enjoyed the conversation. And yeah, talk to you soon.
Okay, wait. Before you go, do you remember a few moments ago I said that I have a niece who had brain cancer when she was 7 years old and has spent the last many years now in a wheelchair. But she writes music. She writes music with other people. She writes the lyrics. Her brain is fully functioning. Her body just doesn't cooperate. Well, I suggested to Sourabh that I would ask Stella if she would write a song and use Soundverse AI to record it, and she did. And I got to tell you, I'm pretty shocked by the results of it. So the lyrics are 100% Stella's. Then she described exactly what she wanted. She described the style, she described the time signature, she described the key. She gave a number of keywords to dial this in to be the song that she had in her mind. The ones that she can't play the musical instruments of her own, but she can describe it. I think you're going to be pretty surprised at the results. It's fantastic. And here it is.
As the shuttle lifted up off of the moon, the truth touched down upon Walter Purdue. Truly stranded, he was never going home, just abandoned. His crew had left him all alone. Oh, Captain Walter Purdue, left behind on the moon, sacrificed for his crew. Poor Captain Walter Purdue, looking down on Earth, he had the loneliest view. Remembering the life he thought he once knew. Walt's no stranger to being left alone, but he realized the pale blue dot never felt like home. Oh, Captain Walter Purdue, left behind on the moon, sacrificed for his crew. Poor Captain Walter Purdue.
You've been listening to Life with Strings Attached. If today's conversation meant something to you, consider passing it on. These stories find their place through the people who share them. A new episode comes out every Friday, right here, wherever you're listening. I'm Jamie Gale, and thanks for listening to Life with Strings Attached.